Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But we begin this week with the Newsroom on the 21st of November 2022. A lot of important developments, a lot of important stories to discuss with you. We'll begin with at least 21 countries that have urged India to improve its protection of freedom of religion, of rights of the religious minorities. Other countries have also raised concern over the increasing violence and the hate speech that has been emanating against the religious minorities and the government's adoption of discriminatory policies such as the anti-conversion laws. 6 human rights organizations also have reminded New Delhi that it still needs to implement these recommendations that are part of a recent United Nations report on India. This, and of course at the same time we heard of different journalists who've left their job in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir because of the undue pressure and fake news that the Indian government is trying to propagate through the different media outlets. This is going to be our first story. Our second segment of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the election, the snap presidential election that were held in Kazakhstan. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has secured a second term in these snap elections, winning 81.31% of the vote. He has also been widely expected to extend his rule over the oil-rich nation by 7 more years. How important is his mandate? What does he plan to do with the country? How does he plan to move his country in the right direction with all the tensions that exist, of course, between Russia and Ukraine, and also to further develop his country? We will be discussing that in our second segment. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the unfortunate incident that has happened in Java, where at least 56 people have been killed, at least 700 injured in an earthquake that rattled the island of Java, that is one of the islands of Indonesia, on Monday. We will be knowing exact number of casualties a bit later, but for the time being, these are the numbers that are being widely circulated. Very unfortunate incident, and of course the condemnations and the remarks have been coming, the reactions have come out from all the quarters in Pakistan for their Indonesian brethren. This is going to be our third news. Our fourth news is about the 26th death anniversary of eminent Pakistani physicist and Nobel laureate Dr. Abdus Salam, that is being observed today, as well for his contribution to the electroweak unification theory. Dr. Abdus Salam was given the 1979 Nobel Prize in Physics, and he became the first Pakistani ever to receive this prestigious award. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the World Day of Television that is being observed today. This is an International United Nations Day, and it talks about the importance of television. We know the importance of television. We also know that PTV, that started way back in 1964, continues to move in the right direction, and the importance that is there not only to inform, entertain, and educate our viewers, but at the same time promote a narrative as far as Pakistan is concerned. This is our last story. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns India and the 21 countries that have urged India to improve its protection of freedom of religion and the rights of religion minorities. At the same time, there have been human rights organizations that have also pressured India to abide by the laws. More in the following report.
Narendra Modi-led Hindutva Indian government is instigating egregious violations of religious and fundamental freedoms, resulting in bleak human rights situations and democratic backslide. Indian human rights record came under scrutiny during the 4th cycle of the Universal Periodic Review in Human Rights Council in Geneva. UN member states have urged India to take a tougher stand on escalating violence, religious discrimination, and reduce the shadowy application of the anti-terror laws during Universal Periodic Review at United Nations Human Rights Council. India's Hindu nationalist government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been under scrutiny for the use of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, particularly targeting minority groups and human rights activists without allowing them an opportunity for a fair trial. The UN report for UPR of India mentioned that Office of the Special Representative of Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict had expressed concerns over detention of children by Indian forces in Kashmir. Several international civil society groups made scathing criticism of India's action in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and its treatment of minorities. Pakistan echoed concerns of international community on Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and serious rights violations, and asked India to release Kashmir political prisoners, journalists, and human rights defenders.
Dr. Asma Shakir Khuwaja is our guest for this very important segment. She joins us from Azad Jammu and Kashmir, where she's the Executive Director of the Center for International Strategic Studies. Thank you very much, ma'am, to have joined us. Ma'am, when you look at the number of countries that pressurize India to change its modus operandi as far as its religious minorities is concerned and the barbarities that it has been perpetuating, and there's a whole list of recommendations that have been provided, that plus the human rights organizations that also are pressurizing India to abide by the human rights laws. Will India listen?
Umar, we all know the answer of this question. India would definitely not listen, because when we see Modi regime and the characteristics and the trends in the regime, yes, there's such international pressure that pops up. Countries request, actually rather it is requesting India to abide by the Human Rights Convention and protect people living within the territories of India. But India always very conveniently shrug all those things under the carpet and ignores it, and just keeps on appeasing the radical Hindutva vote bank within India. You know, how international community requested India to abide by the human rights and just respect the minorities in India. They also included gender-based violence in it as well, and they considered gender as a vulnerable community in India. But India very conveniently gets away with that those things while using the cards of strategic significance and security, regional India's position in regional security calculus. India used those cards to get away with all those human rights violations and brutality it is carrying on. And those countries also requested India that India signed the convention against torture, UN Convention Against Torture in 1997, but failed to ratify it. So in order to make it a law, it is very important that India should ratify the convention against all sorts of torture. And this is the point which at least UNO should take the lead and officially request or pursue rather India to sign this convention of torture against torture, so that the India can be a safer place for people living in it. We have seen that international organizations declared India the electoral autocracy, and India later on India was invited by different Western countries as a democratic entity. We have seen that how India is declining on gender disparity index, minority index. We have seen how conveniently India constitutionalized discrimination and got away with that. India's policy that any Hindu living in South Asia has right to seek Indian nationality, and any one else living within India who is not Hindu, they should go back to their country, and India uh,
It
and
continues exerting pressure and barbarism to all the religious minorities, whether they are within
yeah,
India and especially in the illegally occupied Jammu
yes,
and Kashmir region. Which brings me to
yes,
my next question. A lot of journalists in the Indian held valley are resigning because of the undue pressure that is being put on them as to fabricate stories on what is actually happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. We have journalists like Jahangir Sufi, Siag Jush, Haryar Bukhari, Yaqub Ali, who are working with the Rising Kashmir, that is an English daily, for several years, who have quit the newspaper. We have got Rising Kashmir, several other Srinagar and Jammu based newspapers that are run and funded by the Indian Army and Home Ministry to advance anti-Kashmir agenda. When it comes to media, when it comes to journalism also, India is showing a very bleak, negative image to the entire world. Shouldn't that also be controlled?
See, we have seen that how Indian officials stopped the Pulitzer Prize winner Sana on the airport and didn't allow her to receive her award. We have seen we know that illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is the seized region for last 75 years. We know that no international media can directly go to illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
All right. Asma, Shakir, Khuwaja, we'll stay in touch with you. We have to go to a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our second segment pertains to the Kazakhstan presidential elections. These were snap elections that were held on Sunday, and as a result of which, the results have come. Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has secured a second term in Sunday's elections. He has won by 81.31% of the vote. This was announced by the Central Asian Nations Central Election Commission that said this on Monday, citing preliminary data. We've been joined by our guest for this segment, Lidiya Parkhomchik, who is an expert of the Institute of World Economics and Politics in Kazakhstan. Lidiya, thank you very much to have joined us. Lidiya, what does this bode now that Mr. Tokayev is back for a second term? How does it look for Kazakhstan economically, politically, and strategically?
Well, when we are starting to think about our Kazakhstani future, first of all, we started to pay attention on our political reformation. You know that over the course of just 3 years from the very beginning of its presidency, Tokayev has regularly proposed various initiatives aimed at increasing competitiveness and transparency of foreign policy process. And you know that since then, almost 13 laws were adopted in the framework of political reforms. So President put forward a package of political reforms that once demonstrated that we need for further democratization in the country. In fact, if we looked over the all initiatives, we can find that political liberalization was set by Tokayev in its election program back in 2019. Then he promoted political transformation specifically in his State of National Addresses back in 2019, 20, and 21. But this year, of course, it's very, very special for Kazakhstan. We all remember the tragic events that took place in early January this year, which clearly showed that there is a necessity for radical changes for further democratization. In fact, it was a trigger for political transformation right now in Kazakhstan. That's why on March 15, from the very beginning of this year, President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev delivered his addresses to the nation, which outlined a new program for large-scale transformation for the country. And in fact, this program for political reforms sets, first of all, limits for presidential powers, introduced a mixed proportional majority electoral system, and change in the formation and function of parliament. You probably heard that the president also announced plans for distribution of power and make the shift from office of the president to strong parliament. It's a key idea for future development of the country. Also, it is important for us that the Majlis, it's a lower chamber of the parliament, it will change its system of elections and will be transformed in the mixed one. It will be also changed, including simplification of party resignation procedure and electoral campaign. In fact, it was a main obstacle for political development in the country for many, many years. So after we finally take a law on such kind of transformation, it will be just great for optimizing political process. Well, you know, yeah, of course, if we look at the results of the elections, we need somehow to compare it with the previous results in 2019 and now. For example, you already mentioned the volume of voters who support President Tokayev, but back in 2019, the volume of support was 70%. So we have a gap plus of 10%, which in fact shows there is a way which Kazakhstani citizens support. I mean, a political way. Of course, there is a necessity for economic transformation. It will be even harder than political one. So
All right.
it's
Lidiya, Parkhomchik, I'd like to understand, the public was not happy in the beginning of the year. There were some protests. Do you feel that the public is now pacified? The public now understands with this change, with these elections, and as a result of it, now that the new president is back for a second term with a very heavy mandate and a margin, are they pacified? Are they looking forward to these political amendments, to these constitutional amendments, to the political reforms package? What does the new management under the president now feel as far as measures that need to be taken immediately, urgently, so that the people are happy?
It's not the issue of doing something immediately for people that make them happy, because it's a different case. Make people happy today and make them happy for their lifetime. It's understandable that at the beginning of the year, not only tragic January happened, but also there is a conflict in Ukraine, which also caused some difficulties for Kazakhstani economy to develop. That's why we need to compare both factors and try to deal with it with heavy thinking, not to destroying our connections, economically connected with our regional partners, and creating something new connections. First of all, for expectations. Of course, after January took place, and it almost a year from these tragic events, nowadays, people try to understand that there is still need more time to develop economic strategy which will fulfill all the gaps that were missing during the previous terms and the previous presidency. What will happen, in fact? Political transformation is leading closely with economical one. For example, I will give you just one example. And back in September, during his second national addresses, President initiated of construction of National Fund for Children, which in fact will accumulate income from oil export, and after children will get their 18 years of the growth, that they will have some amount of money for their future education and all other needs for human resources development. It's something new. We haven't this problem before, and all this happened because our government tries to think how our generation, I mean Kazakhstani independent one, who were born at the very, very beginning of Kazakhstan independence back in 1991, in their future life. And of course, we need to understand that all countries all over the world, they feel difficulties in the economy. Heavy inflations, for example, for Kazakhstan, this number hits about 17 per year. It's quite a lot because our national bank prognosed that at the beginning of the year that this number will be just the high limit. It will be only 9, so it's almost twice higher than we expected. And all other macroeconomics positions, we feel that something became worse than we expected. But it's not because something misunderstanding from Kazakhstani government, Kazakhstani people. It's because of geopolitical and geoeconomical situation. That's why there is a way that our nation, I mean Kazakhstani people, could support our government in these hard times in geopolitical arena.
All right. Lidiya, Parkhomchik, expert, Institute of World Economic and Politics, Kazakhstan, thank you very much to have joined us, to have told us a little brief about these latest snap presidential elections, as a result of which the president has now come for a second term with an 81% margin, with an 81% vote. And she also talked about the challenges that lie ahead and how this new government wants to take things in the right direction in order to further stabilize the country in the whole context of the geo-economic, geostrategic and geopolitical arena. Let's come to our last three stories one by one. The first is about the unfortunate earthquake that has hit Java island of Indonesia, as a result of which more than 50 people have been killed, more than 700 people have been injured. The number is increasing as we speak, and we will know the exact estimate within a day or two. There were a lot of people who were trapped in buildings. This quake had a magnitude of 5.4, struck near towns south of Jakarta as far as the United States Geological Survey is concerned. They earlier had said that it had a magnitude of 5.6 and struck near Cianjur, about 100 kilometers east from Jakarta. People, of course, rushed out of buildings. They had a lot of concern about it. Indonesia, as we know, experiences frequent seismic and volcanic activity due to its position in the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the tectonic plates collide. This is, of course, something of geological event that happens time and again. But of course, the number of casualties that we've seen is huge, and the condolences have also come from all the quarters in Pakistan for the Indonesian brethren. We hope that they stabilize themselves after this tragedy, and I hope that the country will brace itself if there are other aftershocks. Then let's come, ladies and gentlemen, to the death anniversary of Dr. Abdus Salam that is being observed today, the 26th death anniversary of eminent Pakistani physicist and Nobel laureate Dr. Abdus Salam, who was born in Jhang on this very day in 1926, got his early education from there, went to Government College Lahore, then he earned his bachelor's degree in maths physics from St. John's College in Cambridge, and then a PhD in theoretical physics in Cambridge. His thesis that was published way back in 1951 contained fundamental work in quantum electrodynamics. He was given the 1979 Nobel Prize in Physics because of his contribution to the electroweak unification theory, and became the first ever Pakistani to have achieved this distinction of having had the Nobel Prize in the physics. He passed away on the 21st of November 1996 at the age of 70 in Oxford, England, after a long illness. We remember him, we'll continue to remember him and his contributions to Pakistan. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's come to today's significance also as far as the United Nations days are concerned. Today is a World Television Day. We are on television. I'm talking to you through a television. In Pakistan, television started in 1964, but of course the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed the 21st of November as the World Television Day through Resolution 51/205 of the 17th of December 1996. On the 21st and the 22nd of November in 1996, the UN held the first World Television Forum, where leading media figures met under the auspices of the UN and discussed growing significance of television in today's changing world and considered how they might enhance their mutual cooperation. That is why 21st of November is declared as the World Television Day. Now, television, as we all know, continues to be a source of information, education and entertainment for us and for so many others across the world. Although we have the traditional television channels like ours, but now we have also a lot of streaming channels that people watch on television, like Netflix, like so many others. Screen sizes might have changed, and people create, post, stream and consume content on different platforms. The number of households with television sets continues to rise. The importance of television, ladies and gentlemen, is paramount. The right information needs to be given so that people are informed of the right information and educated and also entertained. This is what we all need as well, don't we? With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.